oxymoron this week because it's actually talking about PowerPoints and presentation software. And I think the whole aim is basically to talk about the limits of PowerPoint, and here I am putting up a PowerPoint and recording it. But that's a little bit about what happens this week, isn't it? PowerPoint's quite limited, and what we often do with PowerPoint, particularly with the software, is we use PowerPoint as a base, and from that base we then start to do enhancements and digital enrichment, some blendings, a range of programs we can use to take PowerPoint stills, convert them into images, and then blend them through various video techniques and video editing. So we're going to look at some of those things this week. But before we start, let's have a look. The things we should be able to do by the end of the week. And technical difficulties, I've been reading some of the blog entries, and look, the reflections just absolutely fabulous. You know, I get blown away by the work some of you are doing. It's really, really exciting and very, very encouraging. So keep it up. You know, it's just absolutely fabulous. So, you know, we are getting a few technical problems, but by and large, you're really, really good at helping each other too, which is just amazing. And that really is how we all learn technology. You can read a manual and still not know how to do anything. So it's really that personal thing, you know, what Vygotsky would call the zone of proximal development, where someone sits down and says to you, this is really what you need to do. So some insight for presenting learning in schools. Now, you know, PowerPoint is some pretty famous presentations, and I'll point you to a few in a minute, and some quite humorous ones which talk about, you know, life after death by PowerPoint. And so, you know, the internet in its early stages really was just a series of interrelated PowerPoint slideshows. We'll talk about that in a minute too. It just is what it is. It's neither good nor bad. We're going to share insight into ways ICT can support learners in presenting to a broader audience. And also narrowcasting too. Video is really good for narrowcasting. I had a couple of students presenting stuff on HPE. And the whole purpose was to use video software to actually capture students doing particular HPE tasks, movement and executing, for instance, ball skills, running skills, and then using that video to actually improve their technique. So it was really narrowcasting, which is a bit different to broadcasting. Scaffolding thinking, really important. Again, we use SAMR primarily as our major model in doing that now in this course. Differentiate between cultures of learning content and cultures of thinking in the classroom. And again, that's moving up your SAMR framework. And, you know, that's probably the reason why SAMR exists in each of your reflections. You know, in your 1,500 word reflection, you know, you're basically going to have a look at the application of SAMR across, you know, the first 5 weeks of this course. And finally, discuss in detail the requirements of reflective synopsis, which is due in week 6. And we'll see how we go around that. I may actually post something separate tomorrow on that, just to give people some written stuff that they can use for that, because it's a little bit hard for people who can't make it, who can't ask questions here. So I'll try and put something together to summarise the reflective synopsis. Now, having done that introduction, I want you please to interrupt and ask questions at any particular point in time. It's really important that you drive this particular session. And here's a headline from the New York Times on April 26, 2010. And we've met the enemy and he is PowerPoint. Now this comes from General McChrystal, who was head of the NATO forces in the US when he was monitoring the Afghanistan project for NATO. And he basically said, you know, the whole intelligence of this war, he says it doesn't exist because we're trying to track it on PowerPoint. And of course went, you know, half crazy trying to do that. So, and he said, yeah, the Afghanistan army is not or the rebels or the insurgents were not the enemy. In fact, PowerPoint was his enemy. And it, you know, such a quote that it made it to the headline. But the truth is, we all use PowerPoint. But we do this despite the fact that the literature, the research literature, is really not clear on whether PowerPoint enhances student learning and retention or not. Now, for that reason, I want to present some of this to you. Some of this research literature, and just referring you here to a little YouTube clip. If you get a chance, do watch it. But Don McMillan takes us through some reasons about just how bad PowerPoint is from a learning perspective, and more importantly about how poorly it's used. And one of his quotes from that particular PowerPoint slideshow there is he talks about driving through the city on the wet road and his car spins out of control and his life flashed by him in seconds, and yes, of course, much to his horror, it was on PowerPoint. And so he goes on to present a very, very, very funny and humorous take on what not to do in PowerPoint. And so it's really quite, it's worth a look, and it goes for 4 minutes. we won't show it here. We'll just skip through it and point you to it. So please just Google that one, Life After Death by PowerPoint. It's a lot of fun. But when we look at the research, Savoy, Proctor and Salvendi, 2009, we looked at PowerPoint and how PowerPoint can be used. And the reason we start with PowerPoint is because Wendy's material this week started with PowerPoint. And she basically said that most derivatives, most video derivatives we have come from that PowerPoint framework. And so if we, if we all begin at that common point, we can then work forward from there, and hence her material this week takes us from that journey from PowerPoint through to different video applications. We can look at the content type, and we all know about VARC. VARC is a really simplistic. It's a heuristic. It's not actually a tool or a test, but it talks about visual, auditory, and different learning styles. And PowerPoint, again, is applied for all learning styles, as if though all learners come in the one basket. We know they don't, and it's used for a range of presentations: verbal, auditory, text, numeric, and visual and graphic. Now, each of these audiences and each of these functions and learning functions are actually quite different. So PowerPoint doesn't cater equally as well for each of them. So for instance, PowerPoint has been demonstrated in the research has a negative effect on recall. You kind of zone out, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. You zone out on PowerPoint. It does all the summary work for you. Whereas traditional teaching, actually, when the analysis is done in Savoy's studies, traditional teaching has an improved recall component above PowerPoint. So PowerPoint can be useful to summarize, but it doesn't actually support the reaching of conclusions. It doesn't support the cognitive processes, and therefore it doesn't support retention. Now we can also look at text and numeric documents. Okay, when we use those for PowerPoint, there's no notable gain. When you look at Macmillan's PowerPoint slideshow, his video, he'll show you his very first slide starts with a whole massive text, and he, his punchline is, by the time you get to the bottom of the first page, you've forgotten what you're doing there. And that's the thing with PowerPoint. If it's text heavy or if it's numeric, again, there's no noticeable gain. And with traditional teaching, there was certainly no gain, but there was no drop-off, unlike verbal auditory recall. Visual graphic, there's no significant difference that comes through from using PowerPoint. It may be better for complex diagrams, but as we'll see shortly, the more complex the diagram, the harder it is for PowerPoint to actually lead to any interpretation. And traditional methods, there's no difference for basic graphics. So PowerPoint, really, to be used and flogged to death in the way it is, really, it doesn't actually have any net gain over traditional teaching methods. It's delivery convenience. It's a convenience tool, a little bit like takeaway food. You've got to look at the nutrition, quantity and value of it. So the issue for verbal auditory learners is that students can appreciate the structure of a well-ordered presentation. Okay, but with dialogue, argument, narrative, PowerPoint just breaks it down. It distracts and it fragments. Now, a very comical display of that is given in Macmillan's video. It's worth a look. He highlights that really, really well. You can take some simple argument, narrative and dialogue, put it as dot points, and all of a sudden, people have stopped thinking. It's just truncated dot points, bullet points, and it just fragments the discussion, and it breaks down. It actually works against critical thinking. Now, bear in mind, our whole purpose in this program is to come up with ways to establish deeper understandings and deeper knowledges. And yet, when we look at PowerPoint, we can see that even though it's the starting point for video and for a whole lot of other applications, we can see that it actually does fragment critical thinking. This is what the research is saying. The positive uses, if we're going to use PowerPoint, use it sparingly. Use it during discussion and dialogue, and you will go to schools where PowerPoint is going to be the standard. I've only observed 2 classrooms since I've been here in Townsville in the 6 or 7 weeks I've been here, and both classrooms used PowerPoint as the standard delivery mode. So you are going to come across this, so be prepared for what you see. But use it sparingly, if at all. Use it during discussion, use it during dialogue, but video can do so much more. Video can entice, it can hook. Students do like structure, and they do like it also during revision. So it's really important that when you use your PowerPoint, signpost what you're going to do. And at the end, tell them what you've done using PowerPoint. Use the main headings and the turning points in your lesson, okay? Signposting and guiding. These are the positive uses of a static tool like PowerPoint, and it's what comes through all of the research. A technique that people don't do is use a blank screen or clear the screen when you stop to speak or engage with students. I mean, people actually just leave words hanging up on the screen. Everyone's looking at the screen. And one of your learning modalities switches off, your auditory one, and your visual remains switched on. So you're looking at the words, but you're not hearing the explanations. You're not experiencing the engagement. So you've got to ask yourself, at what point do I hit the threshold where PowerPoint is actually working against what I'm trying to do? Now, often when I use PowerPoint, for instance, in university classes, or even when I was teaching the baccalaureate at Cairns High School, I would often put up a multiple choice questions sheet on a PowerPoint slide in between items, okay, or leave the slide blank and invite someone to come up and conduct a class summary. So the entire class actually used that blank screen to brainstorm ideas, okay. Text numeric, on the right-hand side of the page here, sorry, I've got two tables. Okay, and essentially they're the same thing, about dogs, cats and birds. And what we've done in the bottom one here, we've broken it down into other categories. Now I'll just ask you, do you think that becomes more meaningful? It becomes visually difficult to read. The colours are overwhelming. The information, links and connections are not obvious. So when we're using text numeric, I mean, the recipe here is simple. Keep it simple when you're using your PowerPoint tools, and even when you ship a PowerPoint into video. But video, you've also got the auditory capacity to talk about dogs, cats and birds as three distinct categories without having to break them into this incredibly colourful and disruptive and frustrating image. So when you're using data, definitions and references, okay, that you normally would have put up on a blackboard or an overhead projector, okay, PowerPoint can work all right for that. Quotes, put up a direct quote. But again, not too much text. Definitions, really good for definitions. References, really good for setting up an assignment. Okay, here are 3 references. By the end of the lesson, I want you each to come up with 3 more. Set them up. Numeric data, you can present numeric data quickly. Statistics results are good, particularly in a table form, but don't try to make that data too rich or too deep, because it just works against itself. So this whole week is saying, okay, if we start from PowerPoint, where do we get to? And we talked about images last week in week 4. Now here's an image of a PowerPoint representation of someone's personal learnscape. That is, how they learn and what they learn and why they learn. And as you can see, that image looks absolutely, well, it looks insane, really, doesn't it? If that represents someone's learning, it really doesn't help you understand it very much. It's very narcissistic. It's very self-reflective. You would really need to explain that. Okay, and this is the problem with PowerPoint. People put up elaborate diagrams and flowcharts only to discover that nobody really can understand what the hell they're talking about. Just because it's an image, it doesn't make it communicable. And it's what we call chart junk. Okay, it's confusing, misleading, illegible. And it also weakens spatial reasoning, because if you have a look, everything's at the same level. Okay, you can't actually work out, okay, what's in the hierarchy of knowledge here? Bloom's talked about a taxonomy. The taxonomy started in the center and moved out. SAMR is a taxonomy. It starts with substitution and moves up the chain. When you look at this diagram, you can't actually work out readily where the key idea is, where the substantiating ideas are, and where the evidentiary ideas are. So the whole reasoning process is gone. When we build in charts and graphics, like bullet points, they can be oversimplified or distorted. Okay? And we often don't think about the type of graph we use, whether it's even appropriate. Now, these are just things to be on the lookout for this week as you are putting together your video application, because a lot of you are going to start with static files, and you're going to then post those static files into a video repository, which is going to record and sequence those for you. So your real message is not in the video. The video is the medium. Your real message is in how you put together that message. Okay, in most cases, or many cases for you, it may be in stills, and it may be in PowerPoint slides. It could be a range of things. Anyone got any questions or comments they'd like to make at this point? We pretty much in agreement. T, would you agree with that, or do you think PowerPoint is a little bit better?
I have been known to phase out during PowerPoint presentations, so I'd agree with that.
Fabulous. Thanks for your honesty. Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting point. So where do we go? I mean, PowerPoints are cheap. They're easy. They can be a little bit nasty. But, when we look at them, they're perhaps the easiest thing to do. Now, I know a couple of people are experimenting with Prezi at the moment, and Helen Anderson did a brilliant presentation. If you get into her blog and have a look at that, using Prezi, go in and have a look at some of each other's work. Okay, and all of a sudden, you'll find that PowerPoint is much less exciting. Okay? I mean, yes, it will get the message across, but then as a teacher, you're going to have to work so much harder to organise that cognitively for your students. Okay, when we look at dynamic animated data, animation is terrible. Look at Don McMillan's video. He shows you where he's got things flashing around, a slide that took him an hour and a half to make alone. Okay, when you look at it, it's still not a good piece of information, because all it does is finish up with hotspots and hot zones overlaid over data, overlaid over graphs and axes, and in the end, the animation actually distracts from the learning. It draws attention away from you as the teacher. It's much better to give animations to the computer desktop and let the learner engage with the zone of that animation one-to-one. Okay. And entertaining humorous videos may be crowd-pleasing. I did put in Don McMillan's for you, but ultimately can be seen when you're using people's precious time or precious learning time, can be seen as a filler or as a distraction. So our whole aim this week is about matching presentation to content. Now, I've got my contributory model of learning here. I've been talking about this model, banging on about it really for most of the term, and for many years prior to this. So I've been using this model as my key modem for learning, if you like. And again, it starts from a very simple static position where I may well present information in PowerPoint. And I may do what Karl Popper does, and I may challenge my students to disprove that information. If I'm teaching history, I may look at, for instance, what happened with Nazi Germany and the appeasement of Adolf Hitler. I may put up one theory, or I may put up 3 theories, and the students then have to use the class and the resources to identify which theory they believe to be the most correct. And that's going to involve them moving away from my initial idea and moving towards greater communication and the inclusion and exploration of deeper content. So the transformation, I'm using a static presentation to encourage something to morph and develop and change, to open up that learning pathway. So it's a contributory model. They begin with a proposition, but they then go ahead and contribute their own information so that they, in the end, they redefine, if we talk about SAMR, they redefine those initial learning principles. Now when we look, we've got this little table here in the middle, graphics, figures, animation, multimedia, good for PowerPoint, okay? Text, numeric information, okay? PowerPoint is faster than writing it. Concepts, verbal or dialogue, verbal presentation, be selective in supporting your presentation with PowerPoint, okay, because it will dominate. But for graphics and multimedia animation, PowerPoint's good. But it's a basic method of presentation. Text, numeric, either PowerPoint, okay, or writing it, but PowerPoint is faster, and PowerPoint you can go backwards and forwards in time. Okay, you can do that with a blackboard too, but if you write like me, you probably don't want to write on too many blackboards. Okay, I don't know who else has trouble with writing. I also used to teach with this woman, and when she wrote on a blackboard, she would lean forward and bend over, and as she wrote up and down, her backside bounced up and down too. And she could never work out why all the students were actually laughing every time she did some board work. So she took up PowerPoint as her strategy and never really understood why. It was actually quite embarrassing for her physically. But there you go. Everyone has reasons for picking up technology, and hers was a little bit weird. But when we look at the contributory model of e-learning, okay, we've got 4 stages of learning and 4 stages of memory. And when we look at learning, down here in the bottom left, we're trying to acquire it, and we can collect it here at the information repository. We rehearse it. We do that here by doing content-oriented online courses, okay, within a program that is got pre-structured content but allows us and encourages us to work with it, to own it, to cognitively tease it through. Once we've done that, we move to the retention stage, where we then start to work with communities, okay, either outside our classroom or inside our classroom, and we start to co-construct our knowledge by affirming. This is how our brain works. Okay, we have a thing inside our brain called the amygdala. It's a little bit like a crap detector. So when you hear something and you know it's not true, you forget it. Okay, it doesn't stand the test of being worthwhile. The amygdala literally dumps it. And the same thing happens here. When you retain something, it's because your amygdala has actually filed it, processed it into your working memory. And this is how we learn. Once it goes into your working memory, we try to embed it, okay, for retrieval in your long-term memory. And we can see how this reflects in terms of our learning processes. So what we need is a presentation mode that is going to provide a model of learning, which is going to utilize the best things we know about PowerPoint when we know them and when they're useful, and which is also going to embrace our stages of learning and our 4 levels of memory. Because as we go through those stages of learning, we are working through our memory and we're building our attention. This is what we want to achieve. How do we achieve that? SAMR, our old friend SAMR. So here, on this diagram that we've used in previous weeks, we've got the presentation link. Okay, and for instance, we can make a keynote presentation on the iPad. That's the substitution. Instead of handing in a written work, a piece of written work, or doing an oral presentation, you can do a keynote. You can say to your class, okay, in 3 weeks' time, we're going to have a conference. The theme of the conference is this. Okay, I want you all to present a keynote presentation. Okay, and they would do it on their iPad. The augmentation, okay, demonstrate their understanding with Explain Everything. Now, Explain Everything is a piece of software, okay, which enables them to actually break down concepts and provide definitions. So we can see that they've done the presentation and they're now demonstrating understanding. They've moved, if you like, in Bloom's terms, deeper into the taxonomy. Modification, okay? We're going to combine audio, video and text in a movie presentation. So we are modifying the presentation, okay, having demonstrated our understanding at the 2nd level, so that we're now modifying it where we can actually start to enhance. And in terms of the learning model, we're now taking control of that. We are contributing to the knowledge base. We are co-constructing, which Vygotsky would be delighted with. And of course, when we get to redefinition, we can do a Nearpod presentation. Okay, we can do a slideshow presentation. We can do a Prezi. We can post a video. We can make a movie channel where each of the keynote presentations are recorded and posted. So you can see that, the redefinition phase we can move into, as one student did this week with her work, and created a YouTube channel and actually posted videos and intends to continue posting videos there. Great idea. Right up here at the redefinition phase. Gone are the old, presentation notes, the Blackboard notes. Right now, it's a living, breathing, co-constructed e-learning environment. So these are the sorts of transitions we're talking about. The SAMR model steps us through those points. Now this week we wanted to encourage you to try and experiment. Task 5.3. And please be explicit about the task. Some of you are racing off on a tangent and completing a reflection but not addressing some of the key issues. For instance, evidence is critical, and that's why I'm just stressing this in this week's presentation, because when we get round to our final reflective task, the 1500 word one, which is coming due soon, it's really important that, you know, you're incorporating the evidence, that you're sifting through what evidence you need to include, what evidence is critical and what evidence is valued and important. So we look at the nature of presentation tools and options. The second point is the nature of your learner. The third point is what high-level pedagogy might be. Yeah, there's a need for low-level pedagogies. Even my model, the contributory student model, starts with low-level pedagogies and ultimately moves into co-constructed high-level learning. Right? But is it supported through the creation of multimedia presentations by the teacher? But primarily, how your students are going to present learning to an audience. So you can reflect, and here's where the balance comes into these reflections. You can reflect on, you know, entirely about yourself, which is a little bit narcissistic and probably just missing the topic, because the reflection needs to be a balanced one about what happens for you as the teacher and what happens for your learners. So, you know, if you find yourself being marked slightly down, ask yourself that question: am I giving a learner perspective here? And Jesse Hutchison did a fabulous presentation on video. Catchy, quirky, intelligent, funny. He did voiceovers where he talked to himself. It was really quite an interesting Socratic dialogic model he had going, and really demonstrated the power of video. So, and in doing so, was able to highlight the learner's perspective a lot. So just ask yourself, am I, you know, really using and highlighting, giving a balanced evaluation there of what the teacher does and what it's like for the learner. Also explore the technical features. How is it created, shared, uploaded and stored? Okay, it's really important to make mention of those. Okay, when you start with your video, what point are you starting from? Are you shooting an actual MP4 using a camera? Are you starting from stills? Are you taking a current video and enhancing it? What sort of artifacts can you create? And where is it best used? Okay, and that's something that would come up through your SAMA response. You know, this is used in a Year 9 classroom in home economics, and it would be used at the point where I'm discussing either kitchen safety or whatever it is you want to discuss, but you've got to stipulate where it fits in. How can presentations be used at each level of SAMA in your own teaching context? So going back to those 4 levels and you know, okay, maybe you would start off a history class with a PowerPoint presentation. Ultimately, students may present back to you, okay, using a video newsreel, okay, and totally redefine the concept. So in there, you've got to show something of a journey, that the technology is taking you on a journey. And present a model of a created presentation to demonstrate your technical skill. So it only has to be one, a model, okay, and the model, you know, can't really be theoretical. It has to be an actual application of a short video that you've made, okay. And it can be uploaded to your blog, or in some cases to your wiki. They may also be linked from your blog. And again, it's expected that what you present will actually support the discussion that you're offering. So it'll stand as evidence of your skill and also support the ideas and techniques you're offering. Now, Powtoon, anyone use Powtoon?
No, not yet.
Yes, I have.
Who's Helen? Yes.
Yep. I actually did. Oh, I think it was last week when yeah, I had a little play and made my own, and then I uploaded it onto YouTube just to practice, because I've never actually uploaded anything onto YouTube before. So yeah, it was interesting, and I think kids would really enjoy using it.
Okay. Can I ask what example, how you would compare it, for instance, to PowerPoint?
It's very much more interactive. I actually just used, they had a template to use, so and I actually, when I went on there, I thought of an activity that I'd done in the class last term, so I adapted it to as in a class presentation of the, what they did, so just using some of those ideas, and yeah, it's very much more interactive and engaging than PowerPoint. That's one thing I liked about it.
Fabulous, thanks Helen. Bryony McLean also did a Powtoon in this week 4, for her reflection. So if you get a chance to look at Bryony's work, go in there and comment. And that's the big point I'm trying to make this week is, you know, there's some excellent examples out there. Please jump into each other's blogs, comment, feedback, because the more you feed to other people, and it doesn't have to be everyone. I said to you early in the term, find your peloton, find your tribe, get in your tribe, and swap each other's stories, you know, feedback on each other's work, so that when you sit down to do your final 1,500 word reflection, you've got some third-party evidence, you've got some third-party understanding, you've got an external language to help you work through that reflective process. You know, I thought I did this, but the feedback I got was this. I thought this worked really, really well. However, the feedback I got was identified these particular issues. Here is how I might use SAMR or Blooms to actually address that. I may create deeper understanding. I may have a more applied task. You know, think about the feedback you're going to get, because without feedback, you're just guessing yourself. Okay, it's really important to go to blogs and get that feedback. And like Helen, I did also did a Powtoon. I think this one took me probably 45 minutes. I used a template as well. I don't know whether the sound will come through, but we'll give it a try. And it only goes for 1:40, as you can see. All right, now I'll stop that there. But as you can see, it's really simple. It took about 45 minutes to do. Did the sound come through on that one for you?
I can just hear it.
Just here, I didn't see anyone dancing, so I thought perhaps it didn't. It's just a sort of like elevator music, but you know, by and large, it comes with the template. But I do encourage you to get into Powtoon. There's a free trial period. Helen, does the trial period, does it stay free, or for the low edition, or does it only become expensive when you try to buy it?
I can't remember. They have been sending me a lot of emails, and I've actually, because I've been busy and moving on to other things, I haven't gone back. But yeah, it'd be something that I'll keep an eye on.
Yeah, yeah, likewise. I mean, I do remember reading, but I thought there was a trial period where it was for free. And that's one of the limitations, isn't it, that a couple of people have pointed out in their activities this week, in week 4 in particular, with those that did try video. They pointed out actually that a lot of the materials, you can access it once, you can access it for 7 days, but then it does involve a cost. And Prezi, for instance, you can't actually download them. They have to store them on the Prezi site, so it's about linking to Prezi, unless, of course, you want to part with some cash, which is tricky. But our goal really is to, A, save money, and B, also to experiment with the technologies, because, you know, don't buy a technology that you ultimately won't use. But Powtoon is a really interesting one. And, you know, I suppose it's fun, it's a good hook, it gets students in, but ultimately I would probably get students to present their Powtoon as their final presentation, rather than lead with a Powtoon, because, you know, when you're at that stage, that cognitive stage of setting up a task, I actually find this too fast. I don't know what anyone else thinks. It's too punchy, it's a little bit distracting, and I know that you know, there'd be a certain portion of my class, at least 30–40%, that wouldn't get the full message from a Powtoon. They'd have to go back, and they can. You can control it. You've got the video slide card there, the timeline. You can go back and watch different bits. You can reread different bits. You've got full control. But we also know that most learners won't do that. They'll watch it once and say, right, okay, you know, I've seen Hamlet once. I don't need to see Hamlet again. I've read that once. I don't need to read it again. So they don't really actually read and view for understanding. And so we need a technology that's going to create that opportunity for understanding. All right, so at that point, that's just a little summary for this week. And I know you're off on your creative curves and you're doing amazing things. So I'm not going to overtalk this week. I really just wanted to demonstrate a couple of aspects, explain why the course started with PowerPoint presentations and why it moved closer and closer towards video and presentation software. Is anybody using anything in particular this week to do your reflective tool, any particular software base?
It's Helen here. I've been using a website. It's actually linked on Moodle as history, HSTRY, but when you click on it, it comes up as Tutori or something like that. Okay. So I don't know if there's been a change in website name since it's been linked on Moodle, but I've been using that, and I actually used it. I've just finished today my embedded blog entry, so I've used that as my focus for this week, and I really enjoyed it actually, and digital storytelling. So, and I applied the SEMA to how I would use that tool in my classroom. But I did have a question though about, do we actually have to have a video? Because the way I've put my evidence is it's not actually a video form.
No, Helen, screenshots would be adequate.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's just evidence, yeah. Sometimes the software doesn't allow you to take download or provide evidence or hyperlink, so particularly if it's trial software, so just screenshots are brilliant.
I've actually embedded my final product into my blog as well as screenshots of some of the process, but yeah, just when you mentioned video before, I just thought I'd better check.
Indeed, yeah. And on that notion of embedding, thank you, Helen. As you can see from the Powtoon there, that that's actually embedded. I've just embedded the code into a PowerPoint slide, and you can see it's a lot better than putting in a hyperlink too. So particularly for your visual learners. So these little reflections do matter in the end. Anybody else using any particular software this week that they think is a little bit different or worth mentioning?
I've done, it's Selena here, I've been playing around with Prezi this afternoon. I don't know if I'll be able to embed that into my blog, I'll see, but I've just done a few clips together to sort of see how it goes, only because, yeah, I've used PowerPoint before, so I just wanted to try something else.
Yeah, be interested in your perspective on it, because a lot of people go to Prezi and never go back to PowerPoint.
Yeah, I'll see. I don't know if it's just because I've started it this afternoon. I have finished it, but I don't know, whether I'll play around with it a little bit more. But I'd probably say I was a bit more tech savvy with the PowerPoint, but that's probably just lack of experience at the moment. But Prezi did seem quite simple to pick up. It didn't seem too complicated.
Lovely, thank you.
Hi, Selena. I put a link into a YouTube that shows you how to embed your Prezi into your Weebly that I was looking at today. So it's quite helpful.
Where have you put that? Sorry?
It's in the group chat.
In the group chat.
Thank you. That's all good. I was having the same stress, and I was just wondering, does anyone know if you can add background music on Prezi if you've got the free version? Because it's letting me add video and things like that, but I can't add background music.
I'd like to know that too, because I was trying to do that.
Yeah. We've both been tinkering.
Yeah, look, I can't answer that either, because last time I used Prezi, I actually did have a subscription. And I could add background music, so I don't know what the free version would do. Yeah, what the capability.
Hi guys, I'm using Prezi also, and I've been able to add music. I've used it through iTunes. It had an option to put an iTunes music in. I don't know. And yeah,
oh, sorry. If I could find some free music, because it's not something I just have up my sleeve. And I just wondered if anyone knew of sites where you can find free music. I had a bit of a look, and it all seems like you've got to pay for something.
They should give you an option to embed the audio of a YouTube So
Okay.
normally, so instead of, you just kind of bring over the audio without the video playing.
Oh, okay.
But
I'll
I'm not
get
sure
that.
if they do. I haven't found it yet. That's what I've been looking for.
Just on that note as well, Colin, I've just found where I live with these programs I'm using, it just slows my computer down so much. You're probably aware that the other week when I was trying to update my blog, it just wasn't saving anything. And then I had like the circle going around and it was thinking. It was just, yes, I don't know what it is about here, but I'm finding some of these forms of media, when you're trying to do stuff, you could go away, make a cup of tea, make a coffee and come back.
Yeah, and look, that's, you know, really important stuff for your reflection.
Yeah.
Melina, you know, it really is. And this is about the teacher making judgments.
Yeah.
About, you know, and it's all whiz-bangery is good, but the reality is, if it's going to cost you an arm and a leg, you know, to implement that, then you've got to question the cost-benefit of that.
Yeah, I guess the cost, and then, you know, I guess if it's fast for you and you know how to use it, then the quicker you can actually put something together as well.
Yeah. All good curriculum decisions that you'll need to make. Now, before we end today's session, does anybody have a particular question about the 1,500 word reflection?